that story.
There was a question here. Go ahead.
Yes, Mr. LaPaglia, because of the fact that you're Australian born but lived in the United States for a number of years, I've seen you play in Australian films but play in America. So how was it for, I guess, the first time in a while, to play an actual Australian and someone kind of so important to Australian history?
It's actually not that difficult to transition back to, I'm in Australia for probably about 2 days, and it becomes g'day. And when I'm tired and I get mad, it comes out too. And I usually rely on the crew. I say to them, if you hear anything American, smack me. And they do. It's a much different system in Australia. There's no star system. The grip can't smack you. And you say thank you. I always enjoy going back to Australia to make films because there is a maverick quality and a collaborative way of working that is very rare anywhere else in the world. It's really true. And from the guy who makes the tea and biscuits to the guy who's directing the film, there really is no distinction. Everybody's in the same project and they all have equal import. And I think that that contributes. The other thing is that, we had no money. And when you have no money, which is traditionally the case with Australian films, you're forced to become as resourceful as possible. And that resourcefulness starts to, you have to think of other ways to do things. And that kind of thinking starts to build into a more creative way. We shot this film with a crew of 20, tiny, and the DP was cooking breakfast for the crew. The guys were holding the boom. Everybody did everything with dragging camera equipment around, up and down mountains, through rivers. It was really quite phenomenal, and you get really bonded. And I think that helps, helps the film a great deal. The other thing is that we were so lucky because the movie is such broad scope. For that kind of money, it's very hard to get. The Team Marie's people, everything that you saw on that wharf, we didn't have to tell them to do it. They just did it. I was sitting in, just before that war scene, I was sitting in a makeup chair getting all the, gore, and guns started going off, and we heard the screaming going on outside on the wharf, and it sounded real. And the makeup artist and I kind of ran outside and went, oh, they're shooting. But the Team Marie's were like that woman. All of them were so invested. You couldn't pay 500 actors, professional actors, to do that. So in many respects, it all kind of fell into place. I've answered the question.
Good. One last question, please.
I have a question regarding the historical value of the film, or just history. And my professor is very interested in history on film. And the first statement you have the caption, this is a true story. And I just wanted to know, for the sources you used to create the film, there was the reels that were sent back. There was a book that was based on as well. So what is the balance between director's license, creating a story because it's a shot of history, and
Okay, I got it. Did everybody hear that? She's talking about, she's getting her MA in history, and she wants to talk about where is the balance and what is the tension between the authentic sources, like the material that was sent back by the journalist and the book it was based on, and artistic director's license.
Look, I've always loved the way cinema can deal with history. And, you know, films like The Killing Fields, for me, if I think of what happened in Cambodia and the Khmer Rouge, the tragedy of that, I think of a film rather than a documentary, a feature film. And, you know, in recent years, we think of Rwanda, it's Hotel Rwanda, or Uganda, The Last King of Scotland. I mean, I found these films very inspiring. And I think it's because cinema can take the audience on this human journey to a place you've never been, you know, and I think the story of an investigative journalist is a strong genre because it takes the audience with the journalist as they experience it. And I think with this film, of the film The Queen, which is, many of you may have seen, it's a hypothetical discussion between the Queen and Tony Blair during Princess Diana's death. And the filmmakers had to hypothesise about that. And in the way I had to hypothesise about, you know, José Ramos Horta and Roger Rees' dialogue. But we had some great resources as well. The coroner 2 years ago had made a very strong finding on how the Balibo Five were murdered. We based their murder on that. We optioned a book which was written by a woman who was a journalist in East Timor in '75, Jill Jolliffe, and we employed a whole team of researchers to dig into it. But I think the danger with feature films is not to make them docudramas, you know, is to make them dramatic because the human experience, like you know, as a filmmaker, I hope to take you, the audience, to East Timor with these characters to experience.
Very good, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The other thing I wanted to address about that was, you know, if you were to do the film in a linear fashion, as things happened, there'd be 9 more hours of film. So obviously you have to compress events. Even the stuff between, I mean, I talked to President Horta several times, and he and Roger went around quite a few times. They disagreed on a lot of things and almost came to blows on several occasions. And so, you know, it's not hard to extrapolate that that was the essence of their relationship. And in order, you need a strong narrative so that it's not a speech or preaching or a documentary. You want people to be invested and involved in the characters, otherwise you'd make a documentary. And so sometimes there are, you know, 4 different events within a scene. Do they happen exactly that way? No, but they all happened. But for the purposes of making it work dramatically, we compressed them into a scene. And one of the most amazing things was, even as we were filming, we were still getting information. This stuff was cross-referenced every which way from Sunday. And I was getting stuff about Roger Rees virtually to the end. And we would get together every morning and we'd talk about, you know, the new piece of information. And then we would try and fold it into the work that day. So it was kind of like this living, growing thing as we worked. It was really amazing.